Welcome friends to another 40k video. Today we draw on Magisterium by Chris Wraight. We look at the damage done to the Custodes following the war in the Webway, find out how Valdor feels about the Primarchs, and see a little of Valdor interacting with Russ on Prospero. Let's get into this. The first thing we learn is the damage done to the Custodes, the losses they suffered. Keep in mind they're known as the 10,000, and in the Webway, 9 out of 10 of these unique creations of the Emperor were gone forever. These masterpieces of genecraft lost to the invasion of chaos. Simonus, whose master is Valdor, is questioned by him about replenishing the dreadnought shells lost. The Mars delegation have said even they are stretched. There are 7 Valdor needs. He then orders the master armourer to replenish the loss of every blade, every plate and every spear. Simonus thought the timetable was impossible. He himself had fought the creatures in the Webway, and the spear he had used in the end had been broken down to shards that he could only stab with. Then Simonus tells Valdor that Dawn is ready to receive him, and Constantine says another Primarch. At this point Valdor thinks back to the war in Prospero, where he and Russ with their forces faced Magnus and his 1,000 sons. Russ and Valdor speak, and Russ says Valdor took his time obeying the order, and Simonus, who observes, thinks that no living man gave the Captain General an order, save the one who had created him. Valdor responds to Russ by saying he would still take Magnus to Terra. Russ disagrees with this. He says, if my father had truly wished for such, he would not have sent me. Russ says, does Valdor want to continue to have Magisterium? And says Valdor is not the Emperor's blood. And in reference to the Master of Mankind, he finishes with, but we are family, clearly saying Valdor is not. Valdor says so much is wrong with what was said that he doesn't know where to start. Then we go to Valdor meeting Dawn, who says Valdor refused his offer of assistance. And Valdor says, you know where the order came from. And they have a moment, a standoff. Valdor then steers the discussion and says, how are things going in the Webway? Dawn doesn't take this on board and continues to go on to make his point. Dawn says, your forces should have withdrawn. Why hold on for so long? Dawn says they had no hope of holding those portals. Valdor simply says the order was given. The Imperial Fist's Primarch comes back with, you never see any fault in the Emperor or push back, and the Custodes now face a conundrum. You created it to be the embodiment of his will, but we can no longer discover what that is. You're his voice, but he is silent. Can you think for yourself now, Captain General? Valdor says quietly that he and his men are faithful, and he watched on as the Primarchs were made, and saw the dangers then, how they fought and argued. Then would have been the time to question orders. Valdor did not think the Primarchs would be as effective as they were, and seeing it he knew why they were made by the Master of Mankind the way they were. And Valdor says, through that success they became untouchable. Now he sees the error in their forging, and now they are trapped by their fates. He says his men fought in the Webway, and some of them were also doomed. But they played a part in the Emperor's pattern. And then Valdor says that Dawn was the element that could not be accounted for. Dawn says, as usual with Valdor, the fault lies elsewhere. He characterises Valdor as polite, but unable to hide his disdain for the Primarchs. He says the Primarchs did whilst Valdor mused points of law. They did something whilst Valdor stained his hands with book ink. Simonus thinks they may fight, but then it passes, and Valdor says they must confer. Dawn says the power of the custodians in this war was broken by the Webway, and so they must guard the throne, but not the walls. The Marines will finish the fight. Valdor thinks back to Prospero. As Russ and Magnus fight, Simonus says he and Valdor must withdraw, as Russ has unleashed something he cannot control, like Magnus before him. Where did they get this pride from? Valdor says that all of them, the Primarchs, are the architects of what's happening, and he had just watched them being born without doing anything about it. Later in Heresy and back on Terra, we see the Custodes get no aid, as requested, from the Mechanicum, but they are all trained and prepared as best they could for what they will be facing soon, with Russ absent in this fight and Horus on the way. Later, Valdor speaks to Simonas and says regarding the Primarchs that he would have been up to the challenge of fighting Dawn, but he says the Custodes have seen strife between brothers and that no alien power did this to us. We turned on one another, driven by pride and human resentment. I will not add to it. And he says, for now the Custodes must just endure, and that we saw the 18 arrive, we saw them fall, we will see them slip away again. What they perceive as weakness is what shields us from their mistakes. Valdor says he understands that Dawn and Russ see Magisterium as an exercise in power, but there is an older reason. It is the interpretation of the truth discovered through communion with the source. We are interpreters of it, not masters. We are slaves to it. That is our first lesson. All others are secondary. Could this heresy have been prevented, Simonas asks. Valdor did not look at him. His eyes remained fixed on the darkening sky. Why ask what cannot be known, he said. This is the fate we have been given. Across the cityscape, marred by the Lord Commander's fortifications, floodlights switched on. The great hulk of the inner palace, the structure that shielded the Emperor as much as it now imprisoned him, turned a bloody hue. He will speak, says Valdor, his voice firm with certainty. All things repeat themselves. Our time will come again. I think here we see Dawn show his age, whilst Valdor shows his much greater age, his experience. Staying above, staying apart from what you could term as petty conflicts to stay focused on his duty, such as not rising to dawn. But don't lie, I would have loved to have seen them have a little tussle with each other. And now then, friends, I turn things over to you. Hope you enjoyed the video. Drop me a comment down below.